Hi, and welcome back to part 3 of the Making Your Case series, Telling Your Story. Now that you've learned a little bit about the legislative process and known issues and who to talk to, the most important piece is learning to formulate your story and share it with legislators or school board members or even teacher preparation programs like our Family as Faculty, legislators, or legislators. Stories help us connect. And stories also reveal the details, the impact of the system on the daily lives of family and children. They often spur change in systems that seem impossible to understand, and they can also help clarify disagreements. So it's a powerful tool for advocacy, and they also have the power to persuade and move people to action. Did you know that stories are up to 22 times more memorable than facts alone and help make the case for why a policymaker should stand behind your cause? Policymakers want to hear your stories. So you can practice. The first thing you want to do when telling your story at a committee meeting the first thing you do is you sign in as soon as you come in. Know the formality to how your presentation should be. Know the drill. Know how to address people, whether it be Mr. Chairman or a member of the committee. Practice all this at home with mom, dad, teachers, or friends to help remember how to address people. Kids and youth are great if you bring them to tell their stories. Governors pay attention to what you have to say. But make issues real. Don't let people be turned into numbers. Answer questions. Ask if you don't know. It's all right. Just ask calmly to repeat the question or just say, I don't know right now. You can provide written testimony as well. If too many people or enough people have shared stories in support of something, sometimes it's okay to not push it, and you might want to just what they say, wave in support, can sometimes help more than 10 minutes of testimony. So the first thing you want to do is organize your story. You want to make sure it's specific in terms of what you want and what the audience wants. It's essential that you know what you want to be able and willing to ask for. You should also look for ways to connect your ask to what the audience wants. And your research into the perspectives and interests of your audience will assist you. Make it personal. You attract people to your cause through a compelling story. We know through a story that the things we're talking about has had or will have an impact on an actual human being. Convey that struggle. And when describing the struggle, use emotional appeal. How did the issue impact you personally? How did it impact the individual? What internal, physical, emotional, mental, or philosophical challenges or roadblocks did you face? Don't try to tell too much. Your story isn't a chronicle of everything that happened in your life or your child's life. Concentrate on the lessons that you learned and others, and that way others can learn from your experience. Tell just enough of the background so that that a stranger to your issue can understand what's happening and why. Don't tell too little. Readers or listeners should be able to get a feel of the opportunities and threats you had to face so the lessons you learned come alive. And make it informative. In addition to telling your personal story, you'll want to wrap some data around your arguments. So what's your main point and how is it related to your ask? And then timely. Clearly contacting a decision maker after a decision has been made rarely works, and it's equally ineffective to contact a decision maker too early. So circumstances may change around your initial contact and the time of the decision. Your job is to build a relationship with them over time so that when the issue does come up, your specific ask is a no-brainer. You can use this formula when putting your story together for a letter, a phone call, or even an outline to present in person. Let's look at these methods. A handwritten letter. What legislators love best are mom and pop type letters over the form letters. They don't like where everybody says the same thing. Same for those online petitions and copy and paste emails. Waste of time. Never send form letters. Just keep in mind, emails are easy, too easy. Faxes are better. Handwritten is the best. And make that letter personal. Make the letter about you and your story. So you want to set the stage. Introduce yourself and your story. Where does your story take place? Who's involved? What will happen if action is not taken? And begin with a strong statement. You definitely want to identify specific legislation and tell your legislator what effects you think a particular bill, if it becomes a law, will have on you, on your children, on your profession, your business, maybe your community. And identify issues or opinions at the beginning of the letter. Don't bury your main point. Always address only one issue per letter. And if you have another issue, write another letter. And don't forget to include your address so they can respond to you. Be certain to spell your legislator's name correctly and use the correct address. If you don't do that, you could lose your audience like that. Make sure you know the legislator's gender. This sounds pretty obvious, but if you address a legislator by he instead of a she, or vice versa, you might lose the legislator's attention. Write in terms they understand. Avoid acronyms and abbreviations or buzzwords that are not easily understood by someone unfamiliar with your issues. And we all know what that feels like in our own IEP meetings, right? Give the policymaker something he or she can use on the floor when talking to others, other lawmakers. Next is public speaking. Writing can be very effective, but at the same time, as in other persuasion situations, the best way to lobby decision makers is by sharing your story in person. And like anything else, public speaking gets easier with practice. If you have not done much public speaking, start out with a small group of people you already know, maybe colleagues at work or class at school or your place of worship. Be sure to tell the truth. It's important to ensure that all information you provide is accurate and up to date, and to avoid exaggerating, mistaking facts, or otherwise misinterpreting information. Again, if you're asked a question you can't answer, it's okay to say, I'm not able to, I'd be happy to look into that and get back to you, instead of making something up. And try to make a connection with your audience emotionally. But also be sure your story also answers the question, why should I care about the subject? The way you tell your story is often as important as the story itself. And first, don't forget to identify yourself. It's a waste of time to meet with your elected officials without making it clear how you're connected to the district or state that they represent. And the official and staff will be more likely to focus on your issues if they know how it relates to constituents such as yourself. Remember to prioritize your requests. Just as I've been sharing, to be specific in your ask, you also don't want to ask for too many things without making it clear that you what your top priorities are. So don't overwhelm your audience. Let them know which needs need the most attention in the short term. Better yet, try to space your requests so that you're not asking for more than a few things at once. You can work with props. Be sure that your aids are an enhancement of what you are saying and not a distraction. A tangible item can help your story leave a lasting impression and provide helpful story markers for your audience to follow at the same time, depending on your purpose and point. Consider one of these, for example, photos or slides. Maybe some related items like your child's artwork or a communication notebook, maybe a baby calendar or a birthday card, first lunchbox or a backpack, even an audio or videotape clip of the child and family. Other family members or team members as co-presenters are helpful sometimes. And then leave materials behind. You want to leave something behind that succinctly summarizes your message. If you or your organization do not have materials at hand, it's possible that an organization that works on the same issues will. Those one-pagers or fact sheets. And again, I can't stress this enough. Be polite. Even though you may be frustrated with the government, try not to approach this opportunity to speak as adversarial situations. Some tips for when you're at the podium. Relax. Before you begin to speak, take a few deep breaths and slowly scan the audience for familiar faces. Especially with large audiences, use a microphone. In smaller groups, project your voice with confidence. The most frequent problem with nerves is they make us speed up our presentation. Remember to pace yourself. Okay. Speak calmly and slowly, just a bit slower than normal, conversational style. Good listeners require some processing time. It's always helpful to establish clear and frequent eye contact with your audience, even in small groups. You will find listeners who are attentive. Some folks may nod or smile. It's often useful to consistently look at familiar or sympathetic faces in different parts of the audience. And look around frequently at these groups so that all the audience feels included. And if appropriate, it may be helpful to use a bit of humor. But test any humor, any of these humorous comments on friends or colleagues first to see if it works for them. Avoid making any one group professional or parent the butt of a humorous comment, though. Teasing and sarcasm are not a good idea. One person's idea of sarcasm remarks might be another's insult. Allow timing the end of your presentation to audience members to ask questions. If someone asks you a personal question, you can say something like, I find that question difficult for me and I would really rather not answer it. Or I don't know. Say I don't know, but I could find out for you. Don't vilify opponents. It's important to refrain from labeling those who disagree with you as uninformed and careless. Don't bash them. And in fact, it's often helpful to acknowledge opposing views so that the staff recognizes that you have developed your position based on careful evaluation of the facts and different positions. This doesn't mean you shouldn't feel passionate about your position or you shouldn't refute opposing arguments, but it's critical not to give staff the impression that the information you have presented is unreliable because it's colored by your intense feelings. Don't deliver ultimatums. The statement, if he or she does not agree with me on this issue, I will not vote for him or her, carries very little weight in legislators' office. For every person making that statement on one side of any issue, there's often another person making the same statement on the other side. Now you might be thinking, gosh, this is great information, but what if I get up there and I'm all prepared and I can't even get a word out? What if I cry? For even the most experienced speakers, telling a story that reveals a personal or emotional time can be very difficult. And crying is, of course, perfectly acceptable. You can keep going. Don't feel embarrassed and feel the need to sit down or try to make your point. But keep in mind you're trying to get them to do something for you. So act accordingly no matter how passionate you may feel. If you can't do this, find someone else to take the point and wait until you're ready. And if you don't, you might not be hurt. This is to help you in your story. It bears repeating again. That's it for telling your story. Stay tuned for our last part to the 4-part series on making your case. Stay tuned for visiting with legislators. Thanks.